there are lots of ins and outs that are almost impossible to understand unless you do your due diligence in the industry and talk to people who are in it, talk to suppliers. And for me, that was like a really important part of it, was that research part before we started it. Otherwise, we'd never have done it. And the practical advice that I would give on that front is...
This is the We Built This Business podcast. I'm your host, Daniel O'Sullivan. This is the podcast for UK business owners to share their journey, their knowledge, their sacrifices, and their successes. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm pleased to have Hugo Campbell, co-founder of Togather. Togather started life as Feast It back in 2017 as a booking platform for street food vendors. I've tracked their impressive growth over the years, and I'm looking forward to hearing about how they've grown from two friends in their 20s to today, one of the most exciting companies in the event space. Hugo, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Hugo, can you tell our listeners a brief overview of what Togather is all about?
Yeah, so Togather is a marketplace for event suppliers. So we work with who we see as being the best suppliers in the country, from caterers to photographers to venues and a number of other types of event suppliers. And we enable people to book them through the platform for whatever event they might have. So it could be a corporate event, could be a garden party, could be a wedding, could be anything. And yeah, we work with around 3,500 suppliers. We curate them to make sure we're only working with who we see as being the very best in the country. And the whole point of what we do is ensuring that people feel really confident in booking their suppliers for their events online. And we make the process, we take a lot of the stress out of the process of booking suppliers for an event while guaranteeing the quality of those suppliers.
Amazing. Well, 3,500 suppliers. That sounds like a lot of contacts that you have to keep record of there. How many staff do you now have at Togather?
Yeah, so the team's now about 60, and a lot of that is in tech. So building out the platform, making sure that we are, at the forefront when it comes to things like AI, building those into how everything functions, making sure that people are getting matched with exactly the right kind of suppliers for their events, and making sure that the platform is, providing as many benefits as possible to suppliers and is as easy to use as it possibly can be.
And so the platform is essentially a marketplace, effectively?
It is, yeah. So the way the platform works is that someone organizing an event will put in the details, location, a bit of kind of anecdotal information about it, how many people will be attending, and then we will, the kind of service that they're looking for, and then we will match that with the suppliers that we see as being the best possible fit for it. And those suppliers will be invited to quote the event. They'll put their quotes forward. The customer or the organizer will engage with the suppliers over the platform, and then ultimately refine the details of their booking and book it on Together as well. So yeah, it's a marketplace, but people will put in the details of their event and then receive quotes rather than usually that's the flow rather than booking people straight off.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know from experience our corporate events team, so when we have to organise something that's kind of outside of our remit, we will often go to the Together platform and we will put in, what vendors we're looking for or what location, and it will come back with a really great quote for everything that we need. So we have some experience of using you guys, and we've been really impressed with how you've grown. And yeah, 3,500 is impressive. The quality control side of things, I imagine that is one of the biggest factors in your growth. But how have you managed to maintain that quality?
Yeah, it's a really, really vital part of what we do, and it's kind of the one of our big USPs with people like yourself who might come and use the platform is knowing that you will get a really high quality supplier if you go with us. And I'd say, before I kind of go into how we do it, the ultimate proof for it is that our average post-event rating for a supplier is 4.9 out of 5 with people who use the platform. So we, why, it kind of really shows just how well the kind of curation side of things works. And on the curation side, a lot of it is, to be honest, a little too boring to go into because it's about documentation, it's about insurance, it's about how seriously these people take their businesses, and is everything up to date, and do they have all the required documentation to work at a really high level. It differs from caterer to venue to photographer, but there are different types of that. There's also how seriously do people take their brand? We see this as being quite an important part of it. So do you have you thought about what your business is offering? Are you offering something that is slightly different? And is there going to be a desire for that service? And equally, a big part of it is, a tell on that is always photography. The photography taken of a supplier is always super important, and a really good sign of how seriously, they not how seriously they take their business, but a really good kind of a tell of what the service will be like. And then we also, we want to work with people who are super easy to work with, because when it comes to organizing events, if you're the person who's throwing it, it's very likely it's the first time you've done that, or one of the first times you've done that. So we want to make sure that we're working with people who are going to help people along that way, answer any questions they've got quickly. So some of it is some of it is self-selecting because it's a marketplace, so it's often the people who will get back well and will get back quickly to customers who will end up winning that business. But also we check their reviews on other platforms, or Facebook, on Instagram, comments like that, and factor in all of it before we bring someone on board. So there's a mixture of art and science, like kind of as with anything. But ultimately, I think we've got a really good way of kind of judging whether people are going to do a brilliant job. And it's I can now very comfortably recommend Togather to anyone, knowing that they'll have a great time, which is always something I'm very proud of.
Definitely, and I've actually pulled a review here from one of your suppliers, which I think is testament to the quality that you guys offer. So it's actually, if I read it word for word, it's probably easier. Togather is a game changer in the event industry. I joined the platform almost 2 years ago, and I can say most of my bookings come from that platform. I just love how the website works. So I think, anyone that has worked with you for that period of time and can say that about you after that period, it doesn't get any better than that. So I think, we've obviously got a very, very good platform, and really excited to hear how it was built now.
Yeah, very happy to hear that. Review, whoever it was from.
I'll have to find out who actually filled out the review. I didn't get that info.
Some of it, of course, is how much the supplier puts into it. So we're, a platform like kind of any other, and a lot of it is how it's like building a profile on Airbnb. You've got to make it look appealing to people. You've got to work out your prices. You've got to work out, the intricacies of what it is that customers want, and invest the time in to really make it work. And for the suppliers who are happy, who go ahead and do that, there can be, like you've just mentioned, the benefits are really, really big. But you do have to kind of put in a little bit of time up front to make sure that you will get the most out of it, for sure.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So Hugo, if we go back to the beginning now, so how did obviously Togather started life as Feast It. How did you, and is your co-founder is called Digby, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we both have quite silly names. Yeah.
Can you tell us the story of, first of all, how you know each other, and then how you got into business?
Yeah, for sure. We've known each other forever. So we've known each other since we were about 7, live next door. So go a very, very long way back. When we first moved to London, we were living together. I was working as a journalist. He was working for a company you may have heard of called Best Ticket, who were a kind of festival ticketing company. And we were, we had always talked about business ideas, largely hypothetically. And then because he was exposed to the events industry, we got talking about this. We realized that there wasn't a platform out there like one that we had in mind. And, we were at that stage in our careers where we were early enough that we thought it was, a good time to go and take a punt on something. And then, we kind of really, so we talked about it a lot. We did a lot of research in our own time. We really took in the quality of suppliers at events that we went to, whether those might be, as a journalist, I was going to quite a lot of corporate events. He was obviously going to quite a lot of events on his side as well. You go to weddings and etc. And you realize that very regularly the quality of the suppliers can be, and not always, but very regularly is a bit of an afterthought, or people are going for safe, conservative options, or there's maybe a preferred suppliers list that doesn't really work for the person who's booking the suppliers. And so people are ultimately ending up with, the best way of putting it is like ultimately ending up with suppliers, be it a caterer, photographer, maybe even a venue, that just doesn't fit with them, like either their personality or their business or what their business is trying to achieve. And the whole point was trying to make a platform that could make it significantly easier for people to book really good suppliers who actually represent what they want or who they are. So that was the thinking behind it all.
So am I thinking that, so when you first started, Feast It effectively was all about the food, wasn't it? It was all about street food vendors. What was it particularly about street food vendors that spiked the interest for, that's the market we're going to go after first of all?
Yeah, there are a couple of reasons. Firstly, it was because it was 2017. It was a really exciting time for street food in the UK. In general, it kind of had really, it had been the kind of gourmet street food scene had been a bit of a thing in the US for a couple of years, but and I'm sure there are street food suppliers who will hate me for saying this because they'll swear it happened much earlier, but it was sort of around that time it really became this huge thing in the cultural zeitgeist. Time Out list of top 100 street food traders became a big thing. Everyone was going to markets every weekend comparing which is the best market. It was really, and I was working as a journalist at the time, and it was something that everyone was just talking about, and it felt like a really growing market was street food traders at corporate events or at weddings. We realized that it was a great place to start building the marketplace from. Another reason is that street food businesses are quite accessible. So we were able to, literally go and meet people in person, ask them to join the platform, or their numbers were on Facebook or whatever it might be. You could get through to the business owner pretty quickly and convince them to use the platform. So we were actually able to, sign up a lot of people in the early stages, people who were, really, really amazing at what they did. And so we had this great lineup of suppliers when we kicked off at 100 street food traders. Let's say it was 80% at the time out, kind of top 100, because you could really get through to those people. So that was kind of the reason why we kicked it off, and we were able to get some good, PR traction off the back of that. We kind of became known as the street food marketplace, which a lot of people, a lot of my kind of friends and family will still refer to us as today, and as a blessing and a curse. But yeah, it was a great place to start, and still, it's still a big part of what we do. We work with a lot of amazing street food suppliers who are booked for all manner of events through the platform.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking about the eureka moment. So when you decided to launch the business, so you and Digby, did you both, quit your jobs there and then? How did that pan out?
There was a slower period before we made the decision. So there was probably a 6 month period where we were discussing it and doing a bit of research on our own end about how it could work. So we'd done a lot of. It wasn't a complete jump off the cliff and see what happens moment. It was like we had a fairly decent idea that not that it would work necessarily, but that it could work for sure by the time we made that decision.
How did you come to that decision that it could work? Was it because you'd already done? Had you already sold? Had you already made some sales by that part?
We hadn't made sales, but we had tested the idea a lot amongst street food suppliers, with event planners, with done a lot of market research with people who planned events regularly, with business event planners as to whether they would use the platform. People saying they would versus whether they actually will is, a different thing. And also equally on the side of that, we had enough people telling us it would never work as well. So, you do have both sides of the coin. But I think we had enough conviction and spoken to enough people who had said they would use the platform from both a customer and supplier basis to have. We knew that we would have suppliers sign up to the platform for sure. That was one area that we knew we wouldn't have a problem with, and then it was just about making sure the customer side of it would work. But then also we did go into it, and I feel like this isn't necessarily the best business lesson, but we were young, and our kind of our philosophy at that time was just, we're going to put everything we've got into this for, let's say, 3 to 6 months. If we can't get it off the ground, then it's great experience for us. And we had, we were at an age where we could go back to our careers. So a lot of it was, let's see if we can really get this off the ground. But we had a good idea that we would be able to, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, yeah, obviously testing is fantastic, because at least like you say, that there is some kind of an idea there, and like you said, when you're young as well, there's less responsibilities around family and all that sort of thing, so you can give yourself a bit of time. And I think it's something that a lot of people forget at the early stages when they're thinking of starting a business. They just don't do it, and just doing it is half the battle, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also not to say that people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s shouldn't be going and starting businesses, but you do objectively normally have far fewer responsibilities when you're kind of mid-20s, so it felt like a good time.
Let's talk about the funding side of things. So when starting up a business can be expensive. How did you build your first Feast It website?
We were so it was largely built with kind of JPEG mockups. So we had this a version of it which we could show to potential investors and potential suppliers, which to anyone would look like a kind of functioning platform, but actually was just a static JPEGs that you could click through. So we had this version of it that you could get an idea of how it would all work, which was really, really important to getting people on board, because you can tell people about an idea all you want, but actually until they can see it, it often doesn't. It's never quite the same effect. So that was a big part of it, and that enabled us to go and get some investment from there. And that was built by a design agency, who built the platform, and they did some of it off equity in the company. So that was a really big moment for us. Was them kind of coming on board, helping us build the platform. They're still really big supporters of us today, on a personal level and professional. So yeah, that was kind of a big part of the early stages for us.
So obviously going out and raising capital straight away is a fantastic way of starting. How, for those out there that are listening that don't know where they would even go to start, how did you contact investors? Where did you go?
A lot of it was complete. I feel like people use the words, the phrase "spray and pray" was probably quite a good one. It was. We hit up God knows how many hundreds, thousands of people on LinkedIn. Was a big one for us. Just and obviously the vast majority of people don't reply, but we didn't really know much better. Just messaging people with we had a deck made. We had it. It looked all right in terms of the design. We put that out to people, but it was nearly always not the people who we sent it out to who would potentially be the ones who went on to invest. They would introduce you to someone else, and then you go for a coffee with them, and they'd introduce you to someone else. And it was a lot of it was just keeping on, like, hitting people up constantly, and then kind of asking them to kind of explore their networks. That was, to be honest, the majority of it in the early stages for our first kind of angel round. We met a lot of people through that process as well, who we still know today, and are kind of still really useful in the process, are still really useful to the company now, and are still friends with. So honestly, that was kind of the best route we had. We were pretty young, so we didn't really have like extensive contacts or anything in startups or investment or anything like that. But obviously anyone that we did vaguely know who was in business or food or events, we would hit up, and they would potentially put you in contact with someone else as well. So I would say it's all about just speaking to as many people as you can And but more so than directly speaking to them, asking if they know anyone within their network who might be interested in investment or might know people who were. And the other thing that I would say really, really worked, and this is it was we'd always go to people. We'd never directly ask for investment. We'd always say that we were raising, but we'd always go to them for advice. And I think that really does help, because you're not necessarily going in saying, this is what I want to do. You'd say, well, we really appreciate your input on what we're doing. And, if that maybe leaves them wanting to invest, then that's great.
Fascinating. I think that's absolutely ingenious, though, the way you've, like you said, you basically just outreached on a massive scale and then didn't sell straight away. You talked about the product, and then if they were in, they were either in, and you could talk more, or you could recommend someone that would be. And I think so many, especially people that are looking to start a business, funding, getting funding for a business just seems impossible. And I remember going back to when we started with £1,000, and our journey just took so much longer because we didn't have, we didn't invest in a website straight away, and we, it took time to scale up and get the money in so that you could do things properly. When the website launched, was it you and Digby, or did you bring other people in ready for when the website was ready to go?
It was just us at the start for the first, I want to say, couple of months. And also a lot of the website when it launched, it was made by an agency called Neverban. I think they did a fantastic job of making it look very trustworthy. And it was a good user experience. But the reality was a lot of it was just us, behind the scenes, doing kind of everything and on the back end. So that was kind of the role for the first couple of months, and refining how people used it. But it was just us for a while. I was basically working on the sales and supply side, whereas Digby was more working on the kind of product side of things. But yeah, it worked well. And then we brought in our first employees. I think we're a couple of months into the journey, who joined on the same day. Classic kind of startup, doing a bit of everything people, and they were fantastic.
Yeah, I can imagine it. Getting those first employees in is always a daunting prospect when you realise that all your HR needs to be sorted. Then did you have an office at that point?
Oh, we did. We had a tiny little space in Bermondsey, just off Bermondsey Street, actually. And it was good. It was very cramped, and it was this classic kind of startup first office where everyone's slightly working on top of everyone else, and but yeah, it was great.
So talking about the first year now, first year's finished. How many events have you organised? Do you know roughly how many you've done in that first year?
Yeah, we've done a fair amount. I'd say, yeah, you're probably talking, actually off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure, but probably about 700, somewhere between 700 and 1,000. Yeah, a lot of it was done slightly manually. We had done some big events, because a lot of what we did in the first year was all about outreach. So we were working with event planning agencies and helping them with some larger events, working with big companies on organizing events which might require 20 or 30 individual suppliers at. So it was, we did a lot at a very very varied range of events, a lot of them far more manually than you might think, because we are technically a tech platform, but there was lots of time. I'd say maybe spent at least 100 days on site that first year at various events, whatever it might be. And we did. We also got asked to provide the suppliers for the Hackney Half Marathon, which is organised by Virgin at that time, and we ended up curating the kind of F&B lineup for that and delivering that, which was not. Doing live events wasn't part of our plans in the early days, but now has actually grown into being a really important part of the business now as well. So there are kind of two two sides to the business. There's the marketplace, and then there's the live side of things. And that came about because, we were asked about that.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll definitely talk more about that later. So moving into year 2, that would have been 2018, and we're on still focusing on street food. At what point did you branch out into other avenues other than street food? Was that, I don't want to go past COVID, was that after COVID, or was that before the COVID pandemic?
So I think we were working with bars at that point, so not a million miles away.
Mobile bars.
So I think, yeah, exactly. So it was caterers, largely street food, but other types of catering as well, and then bars as well at that point. And then it was really, we took the period during COVID to build out the platform to facilitate other suppliers as well. So it was really during that period.
So the COVID pandemic hit in early 2020. At the time, Feast It was pretty much 100% either live events, like you said, or marketplace in the live event space. What happened in March 2020?
I think the way we went from aiming for doing our first ever million month to doing 0 in sales, which was we were kind of the industry, as you'll be very aware, the events industry was kind of affected hardest, fastest, and for the longest time because they were immediately banned on day one. So that was obviously a bit of a link, I would say. We thankfully, we had a really strong team. We had some really great investors who were behind the business at that time. And I can go a bit into our COVID journey if it's useful now. Where we kind of had that period at the start. We had the thoughts around whether we could potentially look into concentrating on virtual events. There were, I don't know if you most likely remember, there were startups like Hopin raising crazy amounts of cash at that time. And we were kind of looking at it, thinking whether we wanted to go down that route. And we decided that actually that wasn't what we were in it for. I mean, we had started the business to focus on physical events, on the connections that people make when we're at them, and that we think are irreplaceable, and the virtual events, while they really have a place.
There was a time and a place for them, wasn't there?
And they just can't give the same experience. And it's also just not why we started the business. So we decided that we were not going to go down that route and fully concentrated on building out the platform for when events came back. And it was really hard to plot that for a number of reasons. Not helped by crazy government at the time, obviously, who made everything incredibly confusing. But we had supportive investors who understood that it was about building the business for when events came back, and then we were ready to go when we were able to when events were able to kick back off.
Yeah, go back to our journey. I think we had we were doing about 300,000 a month at that point, and it went from that to 0. And it went for 0 for the next, I think it was the next 16 months, pretty much. Fair enough. And did you ever get to the point where you're like, I'm going to throw in the towel?
There were times when it got pretty tough during COVID, and particularly when you thought, if this lasts for too long, then there's no point having done any of this during COVID. And there were some times with, the team where you would, shut your laptop at the end of the day and just be a bit like, oh, I'm not sure we're doing the right thing here. But ultimately, we had a really supportive team who I think, then and now really believed in what we're trying to do. I'd say that really helped with it all. We got quite blinkered vision. There are times when you waver, but we had quite blinkered vision for just making the platform as good as it possibly could be for when events came back. And the view was, if we run out of money before then so be it. Let's get to that point and get as far as we can. And thankfully, events came back before we.
That's incredible resilience, isn't it? And when you look back, absolutely incredibly challenging time, and what a crazy time, like you said as well. It was absolutely mad. The journey that had to go through with events being allowed to happen, not being able to happen, refunds, everything like that. Festivals could happen, then they couldn't happen. Absolutely, tons of rework had to be done. When you came out of the pandemic, were you a stronger business as a result?
Yeah, I think so. I think in a number of ways, in the fact that obviously the team had been through the process of people's jobs changed, they learned new skills, but also the platform was just in a stronger position. So we've been slightly building behind the scenes to make it just better, and also for other types of suppliers to join the platform. So we launched with venues, photographers on board, marquees, and actually that was enabled us to take an immediate step up. There was also the fact that we had kind of really come to understand where we wanted to get to in the live event side of things. So we were speaking to a lot of clients about their events for when they came back. So we spent a lot of time building up relationships over COVID with people who helping them on kind of helping to organize their events for when they came back, or when and if they came back. I think on both sides of the business we were in a considerably stronger position when things came back. We definitely were. We were doing a hell of a lot during COVID for sure, and it never felt like we weren't incredibly busy at all times.
This podcast is sponsored by Team Building Experiences. If you're planning a team building event, away day, or corporate event, then check out team-building-experiences.co.uk and state podcast 15 in the comments to receive 15% off your proposal. So let's talk about the live event side of things. So can you tell me a little bit more about what Togather actually does for the live events?
Yeah, so we'll provide the F&B, so food and beverage suppliers, including bars, a number of live events across the country. And those range from, let's say, London electronic day festivals, for example. In fact, I can look at last week, the weekend, as a really good example of this, where recent weekend we provided the suppliers for Gala Festival, which is an electronic music festival in Peckham Rye Park in London. We were also providing the F&B suppliers at the Bike Shed, which is the UK's largest motorcycle exhibition. And I was lucky enough to go along to both of those, which was great. While at the same time, we were providing the suppliers for the finish line at Ride London, which is, I think, one of the UK's largest cycling events as well, which is, people cycling around, London and Essex and coming back and finishing at the village, which we provided the suppliers for. And that was, and so while that's actually quite London-centric, we do provide F&B suppliers for events across the country. It provides a kind of good range for everything that we do. It's cultural events, it's music festivals. They'll come to us because, they know that we'll do a great job of organizing their suppliers. Another reason that they use us is because we approach it very analytically. So, we spoke a little bit at the beginning about why we started it, about there being potentially low quality or slightly uninspired suppliers at events. That's almost a cliche at a number of festivals or a number of events, and they really see the power of high quality food and beverages kind of a headliner now, and it's becoming much more of a necessity for events where the event landscape is getting more competitive. You need to have reasons for people to come back year on year. And F&B is seen as a really important part of that. And what we do is, we analyze demographics pretty closely. Who's attending an event? We'll put in exactly the right suppliers for that demographic and make sure that everyone's having a really good experience. And ultimately, what that translates to on on the first layer is that the attendees will have a better time because there'll be, items there that are more tailored to them. We'll make sure that we're working with suppliers who we're not going to be queuing for a million years to go and get the food. We'll work closely with them on the menu items that will sell best. And then also we ultimately just improve sales year on year, and not through increasing prices, but through putting in the right suppliers and making sure that everyone's having, that there are the right tailored options. So, lots of events are making some money through tills on suppliers. So we'll make sure that is going up each year by curating the suppliers and putting in really, really great ones.
I think it's that wow factor, isn't it? I mean, when I attend a couple of festivals each year, and one of the most exciting parts of it, as well as the reason you're actually there, is the food. You're like, oh, have you tried this? Oh, I had that one yesterday. You all talk about what vendor you're going to go to that evening or that afternoon, and it becomes part of almost part of the festival ethos, doesn't it? Especially with the drink as well, the different variations of drink now that you can get.
Absolutely. And I think also, it's a lot of people's best memories from Glastonbury or, another great one we're doing is the Royal International Air Tattoo this year, which is 250,000 people, 5 days at an airfield. And for lots of people, it's really important family time or time to go and genuinely pursue their passions, and food is such an important part of people's experience, and it's a great time to kind of share a moment with everyone, and if you have great food, it can become the defining memory or a really important memory from that event. And I know people go to Glastonbury that swear that the best time they were there was when they were eating some food, watching a band on a hill, and it forms such an important part of your experience. And I think also, it's important to say that people treat, I think, festivals in particular, but also a number of events, almost like a holiday. And they really want to be fully immersed when they're there and feel like you're escaping from the world. And food and drink forms a really important part of it. You want to feel like you're having this incredible experience in all areas. And I think, people really understand that now.
How do you think the impact of the changing landscape at the moment, with people going out and partying and more people going to festivals as opposed to going out on the weekends, is impacting the drinks that you offer at festivals? Are you seeing more kind of non-alcoholic options? What's kind of the vibe going on at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's definitely for the better. I would say, my festival experience of going to them as a teenager. I'm thinking about specifically Reading here, and nothing against it because I had an amazing time. But it was essentially beer or cider.
Yeah,
were the options that you could get when you were there.
Carling,
and that it was Carling, and I can't even remember what the cider was, but it probably would have been like Magnus from a plastic bottle.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but those were the options that were there. And now I think people just want to have lots of options, whether it's cocktails, whether it's non-alcoholic. They want to. People have a more refined palate when it comes to food and drink, and I think that's something to be celebrated. And I think lots of bars, you go to a bar at a festival now, and I'm thinking of we've got we work with a great bar partner, Gin and Tonic, on a number of bar events, and they will produce 7 or 8 brilliant options, alcoholic, non-alcoholic cocktails, to kind of cater to everyone, and they take a lot of pride in it. And I think that's just what people, kind of expect these days. They feel like they need to have their tastes catered to. You don't necessarily want to feel like you're just being given the, if it's a gin and tonic you want to have, you want to have the option now for maybe a non-alcoholic one, maybe a strawberry gin, or maybe whatever it is that you particularly like. And I think, kind of, whatever it might be, Gordon's and Schweppes or Britvic doesn't quite do it anymore.
Definitely, there's definitely been a big change. I used to work at my university bar, and pretty much a gin and tonic was a gin and tonic, and that was it.
Yeah.
there wasn't flavours or anything like that. Talking about the nuts and bolts of the business now. So the software side, obviously, you mentioned you're a tech business, but then there's all this fun that comes out of it essentially as well. The tech side, what kind of software have you used that's kind of enabled you to grow like you have, or has assisted definitely with the way that you operate as an individual or as a team?
I find that hard to say, because the answer is the platform is so far away from where we were at the start that it's completely built on all number of back end, front end, bespoke code. So I would say that one thing, the answer loads, and I'm not sure exactly what the best thing to say is. I would say that one area that we're really trying to utilize at the moment, and this will come as no surprise, is just make the most of AI. And I think that's actually really taken over the tech debate at the moment, as to what you should be investing in and what you should be doing, because we're finding there are huge benefits on the potential of AI, and also because it is where it is now. It could be 3 times more advanced in 6 months' time. And, there are things like it can prompt people to provide more information about their events that's super useful to us, that can then enable us to match them better with suppliers. Our matching tools are all run through AI, always improving now. So, we're learning more and more about our customers and suppliers through it. And, it's helping on it's kind of always learning on we have human customer service, and we do think that the human side when it comes to organizing events is super important, because they are slightly complicated things. You do need that hand holding sometimes, but AI in terms of answering questions that people might have in the early stages of planning is incredibly good and getting even better. So that is something that we're looking at a lot, and we think it's going to be a big part of what we do. There's no doubt that it will become more and more important in every industry. Events obviously is something where it's what you're delivering. A lot of it is not tech enabled, but lots of the parts that are AI can really, really help on that front, and the possibilities with it are kind of essentially endless at the moment. So we're trying to work out everything that it can help us with, but also while also not getting in the way of how important we realize interacting with humans is in the event planning again.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of conferences recently, and AI just blows my mind. I mean, I was at one last week, and they were, putting just some text into a field, and then it was like, create a blues song, and it literally created a blues song for this company based around their product in no time at all, in like 10 seconds. And it was, it sounded like it was a real band that was playing, and it was just, absolutely terrifying how quickly that it happened. And it's all going to change, isn't it? And I don't know, like you said, you use a lot of bespoke. We use HubSpot as our CRM system, and already they're bringing in where we will write a reply to a customer, and you literally press a button and AI will rewrite it better. And the time saver on that, and also the the quality control on that, once you've trained it, is going to be immense, isn't it? And there's a lot to come.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to come, and it can be very easy to. And I think it's important that people just get an idea of it, because no matter how there are those moments that come along in tech, and we've all seen the ones where everyone tells you they're going to be the game changers. Over the last few years, Metaverse being a very good example of one, and virtual events similar but not quite being another one. But this really does feel like it has the potential to kind of change the way that everyone works. So it's very important to stay on top of at least the trends of what are going on, and have a good understanding of how it's evolving.
I wanted to go on to your team now. So you've got 60 employees. Managing a team is incredibly difficult, and it has its ups and downs. How do you ensure that you employ the right people for Togather?
Yeah, for us, I'd say I'm maybe similar for you guys, but a lot of people really want to work in events, and that's a great part of it for us. We really do want to work with people who are super keen on the industry, love going to events. So that's always been a big part of it for us. A lot of it as well is, we're a startup, so while we're a few years in now, as relatively young co-founders who are not as relatively young these days, might tell my beard's going quite grey now. We do really love working with people who are kind of able to show us the way forwards, because we started a company relatively young. You're always going to have great spots, and for us it was always super important to bring people in who could explain the next stage of the journey for us, and potentially rip up everything we've been doing so far and give us new ideas. And so that's still something really important to us. And whatever role it might be, whether it's we work with people who are on-site event producers, but then engineers as well. And for us, a major part of it is just having the faith that those people will are really going to be happy to put their own ideas forwards and not necessarily just accept the processes as they are, because they're just not necessarily going to be right. And so for us, it's about trying to work out whether those people are going to take the autonomy and be happy to kind of take control of their area of the business. So yeah, try to work that out is super important to us.
Yeah, getting the right sort of people for your company, like you said. And one area that I think we've been invited to a few times is the parties that you guys put on. These parties, are they often in your office? I've heard that you have some great social occasions. Is that part of building like a good good team, or is it more just because you guys like having fun?
Well, there's both sides of it. So I think the events that you're talking about will be the kind of, we call them the all access events that we do. And so I think we did one in earlier this month, and I think we'll have one coming up in I think it's going to be September, but I can't commit to that because team will kill me if I do. But which you must come along to. But they're essentially just socials for people in the events industry. Because we think it's really important to facilitate that sort of environment for people. Obviously for us, it's a great chance to chat to potential clients or current clients, but actually really, it's about facilitating those spaces where people who work in festivals, suppliers, can get together and just kind of make connections, or just, talk about what it is that they do. So those are really important to us. I think the last one we had about 300 people, 250 people at an amazing venue, the Ministry, where we put on some food and drinks for them in the evening, and it was a really, really great evening. And I met lots of people I'd spoken to on the phone or virtually a few times. And what we do is all about in-person events, so it's really important to us to actually properly meet people, because often you can work this on for months and never physically meet these days. And then on the other side of things, like as a company, it's important to us. We do events, so we do like to go to them all as a team. Just this weekend gone, we all went as a team to Gala Festival on the Friday afternoon and evening, which was really, really good fun. And I think it's I recommend it to anyone. And you were mentioning at the beginning of the call how important it is for companies to go out and socialize and throw, a decent amount of budget at corporate occasions. But, corporate events really, as a cliche, corporate events really don't have to feel corporate at all. And the most important thing you'll get out of them, any corporate event or any kind of company or event that you'll do, is the connections that people build. So we try and facilitate as much as possible, whether it's just going to the pub or, having a mini golf social, or going to a festival together. And then, regularly, people, we get a decent amount of tickets for our events. So often people from the team will go along, and, 5 or 6 of us will go along to a festival or an event that we're having, or tattoo in a couple of time. I know there's a few of us going along to that. So it'll be good.
Excellent. Sounds like a real fun place to work. I think it's very important to get people together. Very important.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the best person to answer that, because my answer is always going to be yes, of course it is. But hopefully other people agree.
So since your original funding round, you've raised more funding. Where is the future of Togather? What is the plan over the next, say, 18 months to 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, we want to continue to build out our tech. It's a really, really important thing for us. Keep improving the marketplace. That's always happening at all times. Working with more suppliers, more really good suppliers, building up our brand because we did rebrand not too long ago. So we want more people just to instinctively think of us when they think of events, and then building the live events that we work with too. So growing out the those partners and proving the benefits of why working with Togather on live events is a really good move for those people. So those are the kind of size of the business that we'll be focusing on and really growing out. I wish I could say expanding to the US and becoming the biggest events company in the world, but that's maybe steps after that. But stuff we'd love to do. But for now, it's just about really consolidating UK market, building the marketplace into an even better place for everyone to organise events, for suppliers to win events, and winning more live events.
That was going to be actually my next question around the US market and whether you're looking to, once you've kind of captured the market enough here to also expand into Europe. And
we'd love to expand into the US at some time, and we do see the market being a really good one, and there being the need for a platform like ours. But it's obviously a big undertaking to go and do that. So we're just waiting for the time to be right.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. The name change, because obviously changing a company name, there's a lot of work involved. What inspired the name change from Feast It?
Yeah, firstly, I think it's a pretty crap name. Was the point number one. We kind of came up with it, the two of us, when we started it. I love it in its own way, but we never felt it fully kind of represented the business. It did a good job of advertising, what we did. But the real reason was that we wanted to grow out into a brand that was more than food, more than catering, and obviously, Feast It has its connotations with food. So we knew we needed to grow out into becoming somewhere that people could book their venue through, book their photographer through, and we knew we needed to grow the brand out from Feast It in those days. And yeah, we're happy with the new name. We think it sounds like it sounds like an events company, and it's all encompassing, which was what we needed it to be. So we're kind of happy with where we've got to, and obviously we love Feast It very dearly, but not too sad to see the back of that thing.
That's an interesting story, and also, like you said, if it's not where you're going, then you may as well change it and move it to where you are going, because otherwise people are going to get confused. You're like, I ordered that through Feast It. It's like, if it's a photographer, and you're like, oh yeah, the two just don't always add up, and that's I guess the key thing. Wanted to ask, what advice would you give to someone who's looking to start a business in 2024?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of it is, I think, do your research on the area. And I know most people do this when they're starting a business, but I feel like you need to be, the events industry I can talk about is quite, there are lots of ins and outs that are almost impossible to understand unless you do your due diligence in the industry and talk to people who are in it, talk to suppliers. And for me, that was like a really important part of it, was that research part before we started it. Otherwise, we'd never have done it. And the practical advice that I would give on that front is, like, don't be afraid to reach out to people. LinkedIn is a great way of doing it. But if they're people even better. But don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask for advice. In the early stages, there were people who you would think of being super busy or really important, who were really happy to give half an hour of their time to have a coffee, or an hour of their time have a coffee and talk about how the industry works, why your platform may or may not work. And that lots of that time was really, really important for a lot of our early decisions, which is that people are happy to talk, and as a rule, I'd say people love being asked for advice. So don't be afraid just to reach out and talk to people who might be in the same industry, or be able to pass on advice, and I'm sure they'll be happy to, well, very often, or more often than you think, would be happy to have a phone call or a coffee to discuss that. And yeah, for me, that was always a really important part. And then the other thing, I think, as we mentioned, was on the investment side. And maybe this is my bias and how we did things, but I speak to a lot of founders about how they're dealing with their investment and for the first stages, and people are often pretty averse to that. Sit down for 4 or 5. I sound like an old school person here, but sit down for 4 or 5 days, bash out. If you think 1,000 is enough, you're wrong. It should be 5,000. Messages to people on LinkedIn, just saying this is, because most people aren't going to come back to you. Just put in that time to make sure you are reaching out to as many people as possible who can introduce you to people. Like that time spent just in the kind of like grinding through contacting people in investment was super important to us.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly valuable advice, and also I think it's something that people don't often think to do, because like you said, people just go, I don't want to, they look important, I don't want to reach out to them. I'll contact someone that I know that has no relevance to my business idea and ask them. And
people do love being asked for advice, and will so often be very happy to give you their time.
That's perfect. So Hugo, thank you very much for coming on today. Where can people find out more information about Togather and also yourself as well?
Yeah, best place to go is just togather.com, which should hopefully give you enough info about what we're about. But then also, I would say we're providing the F&B at a number of really cool live events across the course of this summer. So the Royal International Air Tattoo in July, Pride in London at the end of June, and then a number of kind of Christmas events as well. So I'd say look out for, if you follow Togather on LinkedIn, you'll see all the events that we'll be doing, and hopefully know that those events will at the very least have great food and drink options at them.
Brilliant. And we'll put all that info in the show notes as well, Hugo, so that people that want to reach out to you can find you there. Lovely. Well, that was another amazing episode. Thank you, Hugo.
Thank you very much, Danny. We really appreciate the time.